I'm starting to notice a pattern here. Yeah, you know that hero that got nerfed really, really hard in the last patch, and the hero that got really, really buffed last patch? Well, you'll never believe what happened to them in this patch. The one who got nerfed again, and the one that got buffed again. Oh yeah, sorry, I guess I spoiled it to anyone who watched the only way to play 717 or 716, or really anything that's passed so far. Yeah, Nightstalker got nerfed, Clinkz got buffed, Io got... Well, let's talk about Io in a sec. In 2 months, we'll be watching TI8, the International 8. In 2 months, there'll be 4 more 2-week updates, and I highly doubt that there'll be any more major changes at all. In fact, way back when IceFrog announced the fortnightly updates, he tweeted about it on January the 31st and said it would last exactly 6 months. So obviously that's pretty much now, but keep in mind, if something is written down in regards to Valve, IceFrog or Dota, odds are that it's probably not actually going to happen. But regardless of if it does happen or doesn't, 718 is probably the final big update before TI8, which means now is the best time of year for any budding, young, crazy theory crafters to publish their insane builds. I've got one in particular you'll be seeing next month. But other than that, what's on the table for patch 718, right? I know, I'm sorry, we gotta talk about the items at the start so we can build anticipation for the big hero changes at the end. Delayed gratification and all that. It'll be quick, I swear. Aeon Disc still remains one of the most baffling items in the game. Other than against Bloodseeker in every single game, there is a Bloodseeker. The picking up and utilizing of Aeon Disc is completely unknown to me. Maybe you'd get it on split pushes, I guess. Supports with heals, supports with saves. I mean, maybe. It's really expensive. It's 33.50 gold, but I mean, it doesn't really build up out of cheap items. It's handy, yeah, but so handy that it needed a nerf? I don't know. Here's the thing though, it's absolutely better the later into a game you get, and late game clashes happen so rarely and happen so fast, so the cooldown of an extra 25 seconds might not even actually be noticeable at all, when it's effectively always off of cooldown by the time the next fight comes around. Unless you're up against Zeus. If you're specifically playing Zeus in the ultra late game against an Aeon Disc carrier, just ult all the time, constantly keep triggering it. Just as a joke! Echo Saber has gained 2 strength and lost 3 damage, so for all heroes it makes you at least 36 health stronger, and for a strength hero it just gives you -1 damage. Wow, cool, right? And obviously for anyone who isn't strength, it's just 3 because it's lost 3 damage. Yeah. Why did I even spend time talking about it? Anyway, Hannah Midas has yet again lost another 5 seconds of its cooldown. If this keeps happening, we'll get to a point where Midas just becomes a toggle that auto-kills every creep around you. And even then it might not be picked up, because Midas never gets picked up, and IceFrog's sort of losing it trying to cope with that fact. Expect to see at least one last major change to Midas before TI8. But here's something to think about. The more that this goes down, the more viable it becomes for cooldown reduction based heroes. For your sake, I'll list all of them up to level 15, anything higher like level 20 or anything, I mean, having a Hannah Midas that late, it probably isn't going to do much. But yeah, I'll list them all without comment or criticism, and maybe you can theory craft on your own when Midas might be good on them. The heroes with level 10 cooldown reduction talents are Arc Warden with 8%, Sniper with 25%, and Treant Protector with 10%. I wonder. The heroes with level 15 cooldown reduction talents are Broodmother with 20%, Chaos Knight 12%, Enigma 15%, Lycan 12%, Queen of Pain 12%. And an oddly large number of those heroes could build Midas. I mean, a couple of them already do as core item, but there's one in particular that I don't think it ever really has, but definitely could now. I'll leave you to figure out which one that is. Maybe we'll have a special learning where to play guide in the future for him. Or her. And by future I mean 2 days from now. Orb of Venom losing 2 damage per second on ranged heroes takes it from 5 to 3. And if you think that's bad, that's before reductions. You actually only deal 6.7 damage over 3 whole seconds now, as well as the nearly completely negligible 3 second 4% slow. And you know what that means, right? Nothing. Because this is pretty much only ever bought on Riki Bounty Hunter, Ogre, Omni, and Treant. Maybe Spirit Breaker. You might notice something very melee-y about them all. Leave a comment if you can see the connection. Maelstrom's changes are pretty much absolutely fine. It doesn't change anything yet, but it is getting closer to a pretty big separator between good and bad. Ranged creeps have exactly 300 health with no magic resistance at minute 0. Every 7 minutes 30 seconds they gain 12 health. A Maelstrom would usually come in about after 10 minutes, so obviously after 7 minutes and 30, because that's just a given. By the time we'd pick it up, creeps would have just on 320 health, with us dealing 320 damage in 2 procs. That's totally fine and doable. We've got a little bit of magic amp, so we're constantly going to be killing them. But any more damage reduction to Maelstrom and we'll have to hit the ranged creep one more time. Oh my god, the pain, the worst item in the game. And obviously I'm being facetious. Just for fun, let's go over every single hero in this and list if their last change was a buff or a nerf. After about 5, you'll probably be able to guess the rest. Because Abaddon, right off the bat, who got a buff in 717, also got a buff in 718. Now he runs a little faster. Nothing major, but a buff nonetheless. Note it down. Alchemist got a pretty hefty buff, and wouldn't you know it, in 717 he also got buffed. Back then it was a basic Dispel on Chemical Rage cast, and now it's just a Grievel's Greed cap of 4 gold more. Considering the fact that the duration has increased 133%, the odds of you keeping that extra 32 gold per creep is pretty high. Let's throw a number out there and say we farm 10 creeps a minute without ever losing the buff, which is absolutely totally doable, pretty typical. That's about 40 extra gold in a minute from what it was beforehand. Now, let's say we farm exactly 18 creeps a minute, a rough estimate of every creep in every camp in the Radiant jungle. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. I mean, obviously the easy camp might have like 6, one of them might have 2, but still, it's challenging but totally possible. 72 extra gold, which is 720 extra gold if you keep it up over 10 minutes. And that's extra gold that you get from Grievel's Greed over the old one. I think it's pretty safe to say this is a buff. Ancient Apparition got a buff, 1 second extra Ice Blast per level, and wouldn't you know it, last patch he also got a buff too. Noticing the pattern yet? It's inarguably a buff, albeit like a minor one. It'll mostly just be useful for having that extra second to cause a guy to crumble over the kill threshold. The damage per second itself has always been kind of negligible. It's the kill percent and the lack of healing that's the real breadwinner. Bane is absolutely on record for being hit with terrible nerfs, and he's not even breaking that streak. Weirdly, it's actually all specifically early game nerfs that mellow out to the same cooldowns or damage amount or mana cost at max level. But here's an anomaly. Bloodseeker got a buff exactly 1 month ago. A buff so good that it made people start playing him again, which is good because he was already a fine hero, they just needed a bit of a push. But as soon as we all started playing him again, Ice Frog pulled the buff away from under us, and now he's effectively duped us into playing a hero who has pretty much just been reverted back to what he was a month ago. Pretty smart, eh? It's kind of neat. He's actually the only hero so far to have a buff, and then not another buff. He's in fact one of the only heroes in this entire patch to have that. Chen has been hit hard with a nerf, and I mean I don't even mind that at all. So let me explain. As much as Chen's a fun hero and all that, and I mean there are some people out there who are a bit addicted to him, Holy Persuasion has 2 aspects to it. It used to be on Test of Faith, but now the sendback is part of Holy Persuasion, I don't know. And both parts of Holy Persuasion have an at least 10-second cooldown. But strictly from the perspective of spectating and watching an actual 5v5 fight, aren't you just sort of glad that this happened? I mean, don't get me wrong, in actual games, Chen is so much harder to play. You have to be closer to cast the sendback, you have to be able to predict when to do it 6 seconds in advance. It has a giant cooldown at level 1. But to a spectator, which we are all going to be in August, don't you kind of dig that? It is now harder to run away from a fight. The only way to get out alive is to kill everyone. And that's kind of awesome, man. I mean, sorry Chen players, you have to take this sacrifice for the good of us spectators. And finally, the thing that you thought would break the pattern of buffs on buffs on buffs. Okay, I get it. Ice Frog is wanting to buff heroes bit by bit until they're picked more, but surely he's not going to do that with Clinkz. Surely he's not going to do that with Clinkz. Clinkz has been given major buff after major buff after major buff. They're not going to do it again, right? Clinkz was buffed last patch, he was buffed last patch, he was buffed 3 patches ago, which means he's going to be buffed this patch. It's the rules. And of course, it's specifically Strafe. Again, the spell that makes Clinkz brutal. And I kinda love it. When will it stop? What catastrophic event has to occur for Clinkz to stop getting buffs? A TI8 Game 5 Grand Final where an underfarmed and underleveled Clinkz stands alone against 5 maxed out enemy heroes and solos them all? Is that what needs to happen? Because if it is, I'm so fucking hyped to watch that. Clockwerk's power cogs teetered along a fine line. Oh, and yeah, obviously Clockwerk has been nerfed last patch as well as this patch, but specifically, power cogs has for the longest time been the skill that you level up first in pretty much every single scenario. The specific reason was to help block creeps, but there was always the added benefit of being able to sap 80 damage and 80 mana from the enemy hero if you positioned it right. You can even last hit with it if you were trying for it. And now Power Cogs has crossed the threshold into not good. Specifically, Power Cogs' damage at level 1 is crossed below Clockwerk's base attack damage, and for every single level 1 spell, that is pretty much the line between good and bad. If Clockwerk can hit harder in one auto attack than he can using mana to cast a spell, then that spell has sort of lost its appeal. Sure, it can still block, it can still do what Cogs do, but Rocket Flare does 80 damage. Rocket Flare can harass and last hit. Maybe it's just the better level 1 spell now. Who knows? Crystal Maiden got a buff, a pretty sizable one for a role in the game. Any spell that at level 1 deals fantastic damage is a good spell on a position 5 like CM. Disruptor has 160 damage over 6 seconds with Thunderstrike. Shadow Shaman has 140 damage to a single target. Phoenix, of course, has that 320 damage over 16 seconds for some reason, but we don't really need to count our blessings there. Don't look a gift bird in the mouth and all that. But now Crystal Maiden at level 1 has a 130 damage, 700 cast range AoE slow, or a 150 damage 1.5 second root. And at level 2 she has both. Any other levels on CM are pretty much ignorable. These first 2 levels are key, and they're great. Dark Willow got a buff, so Dark Willow gets a buff. Again, a 40 damage increase to Bramble Maze that evens out to just a 10 damage increase at max level. So, I mean, the same thing as Crystal Maiden. If you're playing Dark Willow as position 5, it's easier. Dazzle is a weird one. I mean, I don't know. Do I lose credibility as a teacher if I say this? I straight up didn't know that Dazzle could deal anywhere between 41 and 59 damage per hit at level 1. That's sort of insane, right? A 20 damage differential. There's the potential that an extremely cursed individual like myself, I had a Hex put on me by a witch a couple of years back, could actually deal 41 damage every single hit for 10 hits, while another Dazzle could deal 59 damage a hit for 10 hits. That's a 180 damage difference on the same hero with the same items at the same level, and thankfully that's fixed. And again, 3 for 3, this position 5 hero, like Dark Willow and Crystal Maiden before it, received a major boost to the level 1 of his Poison Touch. Death Prophet lost 1 armor, insert meme here. Doom actually sort of got a nerf so hard that it actually changed his nerf from last patch to be even worse in this one. So let me explain. A couple of months back, Doom had a movement speed of about 290. Not the best, about average. He then got nerfed to 285, and then again to 280. The problem compounds when you realize that Doom is a hero who also has a percent-based movement speed increase with Scorched Earth. 14% of 290 is something. 14% of 0 is nothing. Doombringer is in a bad place right now. Like, the only way at this point, just hope that the enemy feels so sorry for you that they deliberately walk up to you specifically to get doomed. Otherwise, you're never going to get a cast off. Earthshaker in 717 got a buff, so Earthshaker in 718 gets a buff. Pretty much the same thing as last patch, weirdly enough. Echo Slam was given an extra static 100 initial damage last patch. Now, among other things, Echo Slam can't be disjointed and has gained more damage at level 1 and level 2. Nothing too major, except for the fact that you actually used to be able to, in rare situations, be hit by Echo Slam and then be able to outrun the Echo Slam's, echoes. Echo Slam has an AoE of 600 but doesn't stun. The stun that you're experiencing is of course Aftershock with an AoE of only 300, which meant that before last month you could actually be hit by Echo Slam and not be hit by the immediate stun or damage of Aftershock, meaning you weren't stunned at all. Meaning you could literally just blink out of it and avoid all of it. Obviously 717 added a 100 base damage, which sort of made that harder as it disabled blink daggers for 3 seconds. But before 718 still, you could actually outrun the echoes for that 3 seconds of waiting for blink dagger to come off with cooldown, and then right after that, again, blink away and take no damage. With 718 and the undisjointableness of Echo Slam, it's finally impossible to escape. And then Earth Spirit got a buff, everyone. The world is ending! Valve actually screwed up when it comes to Enchantress. I mean, sure, they say Enchantress has a 25 increase of attack range, but every single time they change that for a hero with an attack modifier, quickly load up a demo to see if they actually did it right. Because they never do. The way it's coded is that Enchantress's attack range is a completely different variable to Enchantress's impetus cast range. Even though they're technically the same thing, right, and they should be bound to the same thing, I mean, they should be. But basically, Enchantress now has a 575 attack range, but still a 550 impetus cast range. If you auto-attack with impetus on auto-cast, you get the 575, but if you manually cast it, you get 550. To be fair, I don't actually mind, considering the fact that I'm a dirty Huskar spammer and not an Enchantress picker, and Huskar has had this problem in reverse for years now. Huskar's Burning Sphere, when auto-cast, shares Huskar's attack range of 400, but if you manually cast it, you get 450. That's kind of not negligible, but speaking of Huskar, where's Huskar? How did that dude of all sneak by Ice Frog without a buff or a nerf? That guy's last change was crazy, and nobody's really doing anything about it. Nobody's saying anything about it, so maybe I shouldn't bring it up. With the whole extra unintended range on Burning Spear, plus the whole controversial pure damage talent, maybe I should just shut my mouth and be cool with it, eh? I'm fine with that. With Enigma, Midnight Pulse is a spell that I really couldn't care less about. I've never been in a position where I'd want to use it before it's level 4. Honestly, I wasn't even aware it had levels before level 4. I mean, level 4 Midnight Pulse is great. Don't even care to remember that you have the spell before that. Invoker has had 2 pretty specific changes that might just be pushing him back to Clockwerk. In fact, brace yourself. It might actually be pushing him into Clockwerk's Meteor Hammer territory. But, I mean, I can't just say that and not explain it, so yeah. Both Clockwerk and Exhort have the same dependency on Cold Snap. It's a great spell from the get-go. What Clockwerk depends on after that is the Tornado plus EMP combo in the mid-game until you meet back in the middle with the Exhort build and pretty much get Ags and have every ability. Exhort has pretty much entirely had more damage and utility to it, with Clockwerk specifically being picked up for the EMP, which only worked with lots of levels in Wex, which Exhort builds obviously didn't have. The combo was always Tornado into EMP, or even potentially EMP cast into Tornado into EMP hit. You can imagine how complicated that could get if Tornado was such a short duration that you had to cast it in between EMP cast and hit. Clockwerk and Exhort have pretty much unanimously leveled up Quas about 4 times throughout history. In fact, probably exactly 4 times. Exhort then maxes Exhort with maybe 1 value point in Wex, and then the reverse for Clockwerk. So, with Tornado Lift being dictated by Quas and the damage and travel distance being dictated by Wex, what does a Tornado with 4 Quas give us? 1.7 seconds. What does the level 10 Talent give us? An extra 1.25 seconds. All up, what's that? 2.95 seconds, and here's where it gets fun. EMP has a 2.9 second delay, and here's where it gets insane. Meteor Hammer has a 3 second delay. Fucking A, right? Oh man, I think I caught the bug. I think I want to do it. Before TI8, I think I'm going to do an Invoker guide. Io got nerfed, right? I mean, everybody's saying he got nerfed. I even alluded to it in the first part of this 718 analysis. He got a nerf, right? I mean, of course he got a nerf. Relocate is now a channeled spell instead of a spell that you can cast and then have activate after a delay. It means you can't move after deciding to cast it. It means you can't tether after casting it. You can't chase a dumb teammate who isn't aware that he's being tethered. You can't do any of that. And it doesn't even matter. You remember way back when I talked about Chen and his inability to teleport our teammates defensively anymore, and how that was actually better for Dota, at least from a spectator's perspective? Well, take that argument and ramp it up to 11 here, because guess what, boys and girls? We haven't been relocating defensively for months now. We don't tether with allies. We don't try and save our teammates and teleport them back to Fountain. We don't do that. We teleport from the Fountain. We teleport forward. We relocate aggressively with our completely self-controlled Helm of the Denominator creep. This nerf means nothing to us specifically, eh? So if other people come to us, at least pretend like we're sad, but honestly, don't be. Us crazy carry IO players, we're absolutely fine. Carry IO for TI8 Grand Finals, right? Hoorah! Legion Commander's buff today is actually one of those weird buffs where it buffs everyone but her. Hey dude, more damage for us every time we win a duel she casts. And then of course Lycan's obligatory
Wolves need no armor
comment. I guess Meepo snuck in and stole Lycans, right? I wonder if that's officially canon in the Dota lore. I mean, are these buffs and nerfs canon? Are the characters aware that some godly force is constantly tinkering with their spells? Do they know? Is that what the omniscience is? Is Omni Knight the only one woke enough to get it? That'd be a twist. Nature's Prophet got a massive boost in agility gain in this patch, which is actually sort of big because Nature's Prophet didn't really have terrible stat gain before all this. The dude innately has a 2.4 strength gain and a 2.9 int gain. Neither is particularly stellar, but they're above average, and now with this edgy gain boost, he's, I think, actually above average in every single category, yeah. He's actually had so much in the way of stat gain boost that he's now sitting very comfortably above Terrorblade to take the position for 6th highest stat gain of all heroes. And let me just spoil that for you, because, I mean, we're about to talk about Terrorblade way later, but Terrorblade just got a 4.2 edgy gain buff. Nature's Prophet is still higher than him overall. He's tied with Vengeful Spirit, with only Monkey King, Silencer, Naga Siren, and of course Invoker excelling ahead of him. And Invoker's a given, considering he's got the little old 4 int gain per level. Basically what I'm saying is that Nature's Prophet has above average starting strength, above average stunning damage, above average everything I think, 600 range, good day vision, good night vision. He's pretty much the perfect hero if you had no items or spells. I guess below average legs though, so I mean that balances it all out. Necrophos is yet another one of those heroes who has a low level 1 damage spell that could, easily be replaced by auto attacks if it gets nerfed enough. Fortunately for us Necrophos players, the opposite's happening. Death Pulse at level 1 is 100 damage now. I can see someone potentially denying a creep before our 80 damage Death Pulse from 717 kills it, but can you see the same thing happening with a 100 damage Death Pulse? I'll list all heroes with higher than 100 damage at level 1. And done. Controversially, Night Stalker has now been officially banned completely from being picked if the player is picking him between the hours of 6 AM and 6 PM in a typical day. Picking Night Stalker during the day causes an immediate loss. Isn't that crazy? Night Stalker could have been yet another hero to, break the chain of nerfs on nerfs and buffs on buffs, but nope. I made the joke in the 717 video where I played that Simpsons clip where he says, "Stop! Stop! He's already dead!" But I guess I can play it again considering the exact same thing has happened. So, I guess... Stop! Stop! He's already dead! Oh wait, no, I already played it. Okay, well, I might as well just do it one more time to future-proof for 719. Oracle's buff seemed like a tiny thing, and that's good, they're not changing him too much. You guys know what I promised if Oracle stopped getting drastically changed all the time, right? I mean, this is the end of pre-TI8 changes. From now until TI8, we actually have a shot at being completely on 718 and just leaded variations of it maybe. We're gearing up to settle the updates to prepare the players for TI8 with a meta that they understand. And oh boy, is that good. Because it means the only way to play Oracle, that 1 hour behemoth, can finally come out. And this one final buff is the cherry on top. Because it's not just 0.3 int growth, it's 0.3 int growth after an already 0.3 int growth like a month back. Oracle's now one of the smartest dudes around, which is great because I'm not. Hopefully being around Oracle enough will make me smart enough by osmosis to make an Oracle guide worthy of all the waiting. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Only time will tell, right? I mean, Oracle himself can tell the future, so we technically already know. But Oracle, if you're watching this video, please don't spoil the results in the comments. Pudge has had a crazy change, people. A fundamentally hero-changing buff for years. For years! Maybe since Dota 2 was actually released, Pudge has had the exact same build. Rot, hook, rot, hook, alt, max, hook, max, rot, max, flesh heap. Obviously, if you want to get into semantics, the 7.0 Dota update that removed leveling attributes and gave talents changed a few things. Yeah, I mean, he's still the same hero. Sure, he was played mid years ago and is now more of an offlaner or a roamer. Sure, he now has talents, but none of them actually fundamentally alter the way that you play him. He doesn't have anything that turns him into a carry or anything drastic like, well, Io. His talents universally just made it easier to play him in the exact same way he was already being played. I mean, out of all heroes that would ever get a rework, the guy who is most played in all games, he's probably not going to be the most likely to get that change, right? So, imagine this. There is utterly no reason, bar damage now, to level Meat Hook past level 1. At level 1, you have 1300 range. That is the sole purpose of maxing it by level 7. We can be at our most powerful 6 levels earlier. That is like 10 minutes earlier for a roamer. And it means that all of this time, all of these months, with every single rot nerf that he's been hit by, it all of a sudden doesn't matter anymore. And I mean, I could not even attempt to convince you that I saw that coming, because I absolutely did not. This is a major change. If you remember correctly, in 708, way back, Rot was changed from a 30% slow at all levels to a 20% at level 1, up to a 32% at level 4. 32 is higher than 30, but 20 is obviously not, and so for the first 3 levels, it was a worse spell. Inarguably a nerf, because you always maxed Hook, meaning that the earliest you could get Rot feasibly was like level 9, and if you wanted a value point in Flesh Heap and your level 10 talent, it would be even later at level 11. And from that point, every single patch that had a Pudge change, Rot was nerfed. 20% to 32% back then? Well, let's make it 17% to 32% now. Oh, 17% then? Why don't we make it 11% now? And now, funnily enough, it doesn't matter, because now we have Rot maxed out by level 7. So, in a roundabout way, we've just got a buff. I mean, in 708, all those many months ago, it was a 30% at all levels, and now it's a 32% at level 4, which we reach immediately. What a roller coaster ride, right? Oh yes, and of course Flesh Heap is still max lost and never thought about ever again, but it'd take a complete rework to make that spell better than Rot or Hook, and I mean, it's not gonna happen. Riki is yet again another one of those heroes that got a big buff to his level 1 abilities. Not only did he get a little more damage, but he also doubled his Blink Strike level 1 damage at the cost of halving its cast range. But I mean, that shouldn't really be too much of an issue in the laning phase when the enemy hero is right next to you, doing that uncomfortable thing of farming and plotting how to kill you while you're farming and doing the exact same thing. Only in Dota, eh? Shadow Shaman has had a slight buff to level 1 Serpent Wards. 10 damage, no biggie, except for the fact that you can spawn 10 of them. So now instead of dealing 400 damage every 1.5 seconds, which is their base attack time, you deal 500 damage. After 45 seconds have passed, you have potentially dealt 3000 extra damage. And if the enemy hero hasn't died yet, then you might be attacking a rock. Skywrath Mage has taken a hefty nerf though. 70 mana to 90 mana might not really seem like much, but consider the rate of use for Arcane Bolt in a typical 40-minute game. You have the potential to Arcane Bolt 2400 times. I mean, I think the real average for casting Arcane Bolt is in the 600s. If that's the case, over the course of an entire game, you will use around 12,000 more mana than you did in 717. Hefty nerf. Speaking of hefty nerf, Sniper didn't get that at all. Sniper actually somehow came out of 718 with incredible buffs, surprisingly. I mean, I guess IceFrog hasn't really played a pub game in a couple of years, because it seems the heroes he's buffing are all pub stompers and pro game no-shows. Or maybe it's worse. Maybe IceFrog is that typical Sniper pub stomper. Man, I really want to know IceFrog's most played hero. I think it'd be really enlightening. I mean, the exact second we find out what his most playeds are is the exact second where every single time they buff those heroes, there'll be riots in the street about bias! So let's just assume, for now, that IceFrog is a Sniper picker and leave it at that. It'd make a lot of sense, because Sniper got some pretty cheesy buffs. Headshot damage no longer blocking BKB is a pretty worrying nerf, but the trade-off makes it totally fine. Headshot damage was increased to 110 at max level, and tell me this, how much more often are you attacking a non-BKB unit than you are attacking a BKB unit? 90% of the time? 95? 99% of the time? Whatever the number is, we can all be sure it's more than the time that we're not. Overall, Sniper does more damage, and in pubs nobody goes BKB anyway. And then Sven got a pretty cozy buff that just helps him do the job he was already doing, but just a little bit better, you know? I would have skipped over it entirely, but I really just had to thank you, IceFrog. I don't know why, but it always just irked me how it went from 30% at level 1 to 66% at level 4. 66? Ugh, come on, gross man, round it up. And round it up he did. Templar Assassin's change is just a nice one that I just really appreciate, you know? I mean, the only way to see psionic traps was to have True Sight. You could get True Sight from Zeus's Lightning Bolt, Nolt, and from Towers, and from Necro Warrior, from Gem, from Clockwerk's level 25 Rocket Flare, and from Sentries. Those things that cost actual real gold that you need to buy other things. The thing that costs just enough gold to make you not want to do it. The thing that everybody needs but nobody ever wants to buy. You know, I just appreciate that supports have the opportunity to gain the lost money back. Sentry wards should never really be a burden to buy, in my opinion. I hope you'd agree. So thank you, TA, for your sacrificial nerf. Because of it, all supports got buffed. Thank you. Terrorblade got buffed to 4.2 edge again. Remember when PL got the exact same thing and it was a bloodbath? Yeah, looking forward to TI8 now with Eternal Lane be able to first pick that bad boy and maintain his like 92% win rate with him. Just to alleviate your stress though, do keep in mind the dude's got like 488 health at level 1. That's pretty low. You know what to do. Ward his jungle, harass him out of lane, pray to a higher power, beg, you know. Normal strats for dealing with Terrorblade. Long ago I made a video about Tidehunter and the concept of playing him as like a sort of no-blink core, and it's, you know, not bad. A lot has changed since that video came out, but there was a specific section in it where I talked about Ags, and at no point has that ever been a bad thing to go. It hasn't been nerfed, it hasn't been replaced by better items added to the game, it is in fact better than ever. If you don't remember, Ags turns your Gush into an AoE spell with a 7-second cooldown and an 1800 cast range, and Gush innately just has armor reduction. So effectively making the spell an AoE by virtue of the Ags pickup actually sort of converts you into this armor melting behemoth. You're a big tanky dude who can justify Medallion or Solo Crest. You're in the middle of team fights with Aura, so you can justify Assault Curious. And hey man, you're already 2/3 of the way there. Why not get Desolator and finish the trifecta? But yeah, with Gush giving an extra point of armor reduction at every level and even an extra 5 at level 20, Ags will never not be a good idea. Go Ags. I mean, if you want. Timbersaw has the ability to hit Whirling Death 3 times on a target before the first one's debuff runs out. Remember that, because we're going to get into some crazy stuff here. Always remember that when it comes to Whirling Death buffs and nerfs, because it's strangely important. So let's just work this all out, right? Okay. Oh god, Mathis is coming. 15% of X, then 15% of 15% of X, then 15% of 15% of 15% of X. That's how much of a stat reduction we can do to a single person. It's not 45%, it's not like 15 times 3, it doesn't work like that. It's closer to 38.5% because of like numbers and shit. But 38.5% stat reduction is inarguably a pretty large amount, especially when in every single instance of Whirling Death, the reduction happens, and then damage, which is up to 250 damage pure. So let's just say a guy's got 50 strength, giving him 900 health because it's a 1 strength to 18 health and all that. Let's work it out. Okay, 15% of 900 taken away leaves us with 765, then 250 damage right off the top. That gives us 515, right? already nearly halfway. I mean, dang. Let's pretend he has no health regen or that Whirling Death is cast immediately after this one again, so his health doesn't increase and muddy the numbers. It's not 15% of 515 taken away this time because it's removing the strength, not the health related to the strength. The first cast took away 15% to 50 strength, giving us 42.5 strength. Now 15% off of that leaves us with 36.125 strength left. Yeah, okay. 515 is 57.2% of 900. So this next number is going to be the same 57.2% of our new total. So with 36.125 strength, we'd have 650.25 total health. So we'd be at 57.2% of 650.25, which is 371.943, running up to 372, I think. Anyway, again, take away 250 pure, and wow, this is getting dramatic because now it's 121.9 health. You don't need to do the math here at this point, right? No matter what happens, the next Whirling Death is going to kill him. Better run. You've only got a couple of seconds before it's off cooldown again. Oh, too late. Timbersaw is a damage-dealing beast that isn't really appreciated enough. Lead with Whirling Death and you'll kill all enemies at least 15% faster. And we haven't even talked about Octarine, Refresher, Arcane Rune. There's a fun visual, eh? I brought up Nature's Prophet way up there as the 6th best hero when it comes to stat gain, so I don't know, to balance it out, let's talk about the 2nd worst. Tiny! And he's just the 2nd worst. He managed to crawl his way up from dead last with a 3.6 strength gain he now has. There's still the gaping issue of his absolute 0 agi, but at this point it's a feature, right? Sort of like Rotorua, which sounds like gibberish, but is actually a small city in New Zealand, close to where I grew up. It's sort of famous. Maybe infamous, for all of this geothermal activity that goes on in the district. Geysers, hot mud pools, springs, lakes, and the entire place, because of all of the geothermal activity, smells like sulfur. It smells like rotten eggs. And we love it. Kiwis love it. Tourists love it too. It's a pretty popular place for you dirty Pakeas to visit, and I'm allowed to say that. I'm a native. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Tiny sucks. But funnily enough, I really didn't think that this would be the case, but Ursa probably has the longest section in this video. Ursa is always a sleeper hero when it comes to buffs. Anything involving Fury Swipes or Overpower can seem like absolutely nothing at all in the grand scheme of things, but you've always got to watch out. They're exponential growth spells. Let me explain. All that's changed is we get 1 extra attack per Overpower cast, pretty much nothing, right? On a normal hero, 1 extra bonus attack will average about 100 damage, no biggie. But Ursa's different. This is Ursa's damage with Overpower and Fury Swipes at level 4. Just a warning, it looks like a seamless cut right here, but there's like hours and hours and hours of time in between recording that first bit and recording this because I suck at math. Alright, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the formula for how much bonus damage you're going to deal with a certain amount of hits is Fury Swipes level times something squared to... Okay, let's just ignore that first bit and just assume 100% of the time we're going to have level 4 Fury Swipes and deal 30 damage, right? This is 717's numbers. 30 damage. Good so far? Good. Okay. So the formula should be to calculate the total bonus damage you're about to deal with the nth hit, represented by n here. It'd be 30 damage, times n, times the hit that we're going to do, times the sum of n plus 1, and then divided by 2. The reason it's the sum of n plus 1 is because on first hit, the Fury Swipes starts, instead of after that first hit. Sort of like how Desolator works. Desolator's first hit applies Deso, and then you will immediately get the armor reduction on that first hit. So, and then divided by 2. So let's just chuck in a number to test the theory. One hit? Alright, so 30 times 1 times the sum of n plus 1, so 2, then all divided by 2. That'd give us 30. So yeah, that's alright, because we'd do 30 damage with Fury Swipes in 1 hit. Okay, this is working out so far. Okay, let's try 0 to be sure. 30 times 0 times 1 divided by 2. Wow, who would have thunk it? 0. Yeah, that's absolutely right. We deal 0 and 0 hits. Okay, so now let's try 6, because that's overpowers, 717. 717 let us overpower for 6 attacks. Let's work out the damage on that 6th hit. 30 times 6 times 7 divided by 2 equals 630. I mean, that sounds about right? On our 6th hit, we're going to deal 180 damage, with every previous one dealing 30 less than the next, so 630 damage all up. Okay, now let's plug in 718's numbers, with 7 overpower attacks, and plus 16 Fury Swipes damage, taking us to 46 damage per Fury Swipes hit, right? Okay, 46 times 7 times the sum of 7 plus 1, so 8, and then all divided by 2. That's 1,288. All we did was add 1 more overpower swipe and 16 more Fury Swipes damage per hit. And okay, don't forget, this can keep going. You can attack 50 times, you don't have to depend on overpower. But here, let's actually do depend on only overpower, and use it twice, one after the other, because of its 20-second duration and 10-second cooldown. This is a thing that you can do, it's a thing that you probably should do. 14 hits, 46 damage. So 46 times 14 times 15 divided by 2, that's 4,830. That's double the amount of attacks, but much more than double the amount of damage. Let's do it again. 46 times 21 times 22 divided by 20, that's 10,140. Okay, today on the Only Way to Play, we have experienced the power of exponential growth. That was oddly kind of fun, right? Does that make me a nerd? Well, I guess the prerequisite literally making a portion of my living wages off of Dota-centric tutorial videos sort of covered that already. As well as the fact that I use the word prerequisite. Okay, it's getting a bit too geeky in here. Let's talk about some dumb heroes. The Windranger lost 2 whole int points. What a dweeb! Bro, you're so dumb. How can you even function? Basically, Windranger is still in that weird place of having focus fire unable to be turned off, meaning that any blade mail characters can pretty much force her to kill herself by attacking you. I guess that sort of explains the int reduction. Going back up though, Warlock has pretty much taken a bit of a hit to Shadow Word, and while it may look like a nerf, because it absolutely is, honestly, as a Warlock player myself, it was a much needed nerf. Shadow Word, as it stood in 7.1.7 and beyond, was pretty much the equivalent of paying $3 for an atomic bomb to drop on your next door neighbor Glenn because he moses the one at 4 in the morning like a weirdo. Dude, 4 AM is when I'm usually trying to get to sleep, so it's pretty inconsiderate. And now with this change, it's closer to paying maybe $50 for the nuke. It's still a nuke that you're getting for an extremely cheap price. And it's clearly going to get the job done and then some, but $50 is stop and think money. At least for me, I don't know. You could buy a nice pair of socks for $50. And you can cast a couple great spells with 120 mana. It's up to you. Weaver is yet another hero you have to be meticulous with. Most of his attacks proc twice, so a 3.1 agi gain is occasionally a 6.2 agi gain. It's not much, but it's not nothing. And then Shikuchi is the same. A 175 damage nuke doesn't really seem like too much until you realize you cast that thing like 50 times a fight. It adds up. What doesn't add up is Witch Doctor's Voodoo Restoration activation. Oh, that was, ooh, that tingled on the tongue. But because it's, just that, an activation cost. After paying 50 mana, you only have to pay the constant mana cost of 20 per second. And that doesn't change. It doesn't go up or down depending on this patch node. A bit of a misnomer, just thought I'd bring it up. And finally, for what might just be the final of these bi-weekly update only ways to play, the final hero for what could be the final one of these videos, Wraith King. We've been on a journey recently, haven't we? Wraith King is indicative of everything IceFrog and I both love in Dota. Wraith King was a hero with a stun, lifesteal, crit, and respawn ult for years and years and years. And on a whim, IceFrog thought, why not give him a skeleton army? So he did. And he loved it. And I loved it. It's one of those changes that was so officially and universally decided as great that, it's now sort of just become Wraith King's new thing. There aren't that many patches that this guy gets a change on that doesn't tweak his skeletons. And now they're at a point where they're even getting their own skins. I think it's safe to say that these little guys are going to be with us for years and years to come. And that's a comforting thought, right? And so with all that said and done, thank you for watching The Only Way to Play 718. If this is truly the end of the bi-weekly patches, then I have to say I've really enjoyed the journey. A lot's happened, eh? Who knows what'll happen next? Regardless of what, I'll be around making very late videos about it all, 3 days after everyone else has already finished talking about it. Look forward to my TI8 Grand Final winner predictions 2 weeks after TI8 is all finished. Until then, I'm Eric, and let's future-proof the series for all the Night Stalker nerfs forevermore.